Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey. I'm the CEO of Treasury Webinars. Thank you for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, Harmonizing AR, Sales, and Treasury to Control Your Cash. Control of cash has always been incredibly important, but given all of the economic uncertainty, the predictability of accounts receivable is more important than ever. And that predictability is absolutely driven by how we interact with our customers and how we collaborate with sales from a treasury perspective, how we collaborate with AR and sales, and especially from the AR side, the relationship that we have with our sales team. I'd like to thank my webinar partner today, Esker. They share my strong commitment to thought leadership and, more importantly, to the career success of those who use their products and services. They have a lot of amazing content on their website, all things AR, all things cash conversion cycle. And so today we're going to talk a lot about the AR and treasury side of things. And then in June, we're going to talk about AP and procurement side of things. So all of the dynamics due to some of the policies that are coming out and the uncertainty of the global markets is making that control of cash more important than ever. And us being able to have visibility in that cash as well allows us to optimize our working capital. So before we dive in, I have to remember to share with you the housekeeping items. If anyone is interested in a certificate of attendance for today's webinar, you'll have to stay on for the duration of the webinar and answer all of the polling questions we ask throughout the webinar. We're going to have a few more polling questions than normal today, as I'm going to go through some survey results, and I'd like to see where our audience sits relative to some of our survey results. If you'd like a copy of today's presentation, just go ahead and send an email to ernie@treasurywebinars.com, and I will automatically send a certificate of attendance to those who indicated that they were interested in that when registering for the webinar and answer all the polling questions and remain on for the duration of our webinar today. So first, we're going to start off at a high level. We're going to talk about the art of relationship building. So really, we're going to talk about communication, right? Collaboration and impact, and the role that that plays in effectively not only receiving our cash, getting that predictability into that as well, and allowing our relationships to withstand whatever the economic environment throws our way. So we're going to look at several dimensions from an AR perspective, and then we're going to turn the tables a little bit from a treasury perspective. So we're going to talk about the relationships. We're going to talk about those internal relationships on our AR team. And so I'll share with you a little preview. What I've found is there are a lot of silos internally with our AR team, so we need to get our house in order in that respect, especially related to how we communicate with our customers. And we'll talk about that and some challenges that we see there. And then we'll talk about the relationship between AR and Treasury and what we're seeing in terms of not only the lay of the land, but also some momentum there. And then we'll talk about AR relationships with sales. And then I love to share some Esker content. So they have a great ebook talking about AR and AI and the humanity of that, and really how it impacts and makes the lives of folks that work in AR and beyond AR more efficient. They offer more value. So I like to show specifically the benefits that a company can realize in investing in AR and AP and treasury related technology. And then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into treasury relationships. The AFP National not just released, it was a few months ago, a treasury benchmarking survey, which is really great. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, I think that's a very good use of your time. So I have the hyperlinks in for that survey in my slides. And then, of course, we're going to wrap things up with some key inferences, and then, of course, some key takeaways for action items that you can use to offer more value immediately following the webinar. So first, I want to start off with just some of the impact of the T words. Sometimes people don't like the word tariff, but it's causing global uncertainty. So my friends, Strategic Treasurer, they did a flash survey just trying to give us a high-level view of the impact of tariffs and potential tariffs. We know that's a moving ball. Oops, it probably moved here. It was 10 seconds that went by. So interesting. Lead us to manage determined approaches to manage our exposure, right? And so managing our exposure means having good relationships with our customers, knowing more about our customers, but also knowing when we're going to receive our payments, because what that does is it allows us to effectively manage our counterparty risk exposures relative to specific demographics that matter to our company. Oftentimes, we'll see that by currency, we'll see that by industry, and what we'll see more and more often is we'll start to manage that by geography, especially now that we see tariffs are a moving animal related to different regions across the world. And then we see in need for working capital and financing. So we've got to make sure we have a good idea and as much information as possible as what we're going to need possibly on the financing side. And that's impacted by having a good forecast of what our revenues are going to be. And then we've already seen impact cost. And then companies are looking right for alternative suppliers to mitigate those risks. So again, in June, we'll really dive in on that and the importance of alignment with procurement, AP, and Treasury. And so what we'll see, it's not surprising, is that there's already been a tremendous amount of impacts. This survey was probably done a month or two ago. I would imagine that no impact so far is probably close to zero. Right now, I got to tell my story. This is more on the procurement side. My wife works in procurement, and they were ready to import some machinery from overseas, the United States. I believe it was just in the EU, maybe it was France. And so the product that they had, one of the big pieces of machinery, had some aluminum on it. Well, originally they were going to assess the tariff based on the entire value of the machine, even though it was only 10% aluminum, and that was going to put a 30% cost adder on that piece of equipment. So especially if you are in manufacturing, it's really important. A lot of times your margins don't have room for a 30% impact, right? And then if that's something that you can control in managing your working capital, we need to understand, right, on the AR side, how we're going to be managing those revenues and that predictability. So it's more important than ever to have those good relationships internally and externally, and really optimize our revenue in streams of revenue. If nothing else, having a solid enough relationship for your customers to be honest with you, right? I'd rather know that you're not going to pay than assuming that you are going to pay and then getting hit with maybe not even be able to finance my company's business, which is Treasury is the lifeblood. So that's very important to us. So let's talk about building a relationship. I like to talk about the foundation. It seems like common sense, but a lot of times I'll share content that just makes someone think, right? If I make you think or take an action, that's a win for me. And that's why my webinars are different than almost any other that you'll have the chance to experience. So, one, you want to communicate what your expectations are, right? Whether that's with your colleagues, whether that's with your outside, right? Maybe your suppliers. It also works in your personal life. So a lot of times people don't take what works in their personal life and in the professional life. So those are things to think about. And you have to be transparent, right? Ask each partner what they need from you to deliver value to you, right? So communicate with your customers, right? Let them know what they need from you. And then understand the expectations, right, of those providing products or services to you as a professional, whether that's AR, Treasury, Finance, AP, wherever you might fall. And then honest and authentic communication and realign on expectations. Office this creates trust, which is incredibly important to any relationships. I think I talk about this maybe in a minute or two, but people make mistakes. People are human, right? People might not love what you're going to say, but if you have the courage to tell them up front what's going to happen and what you're going to do about it down the line, that is going to be relationship gold. So I like to talk about the art and science of collaboration. So I don't think people really get taught soft skills enough. So I'm going to do some Dr. Phil a little bit today. So before we can collaborate, we have to communicate. So transparent, honest communication, right, facilitates collaboration, and then collaboration is what results in productivity, and productivity in things related to productivity impact our company's bottom line and help us deliver value across the enterprise. So, the foundation of effective communication. I actually have webinars. If you're interested, please drop me a note on effective listening. It's something that I need to continue to work on. I'm not the best at it. This is not one of my strengths, but I know that. So if this is not part of your training, if you have a team, a course on effective listening can be a game changer. So number one, stop talking, right? That's hard for me. You want to remove the distractions, especially if you're at home right now, right? So if you're on your computer and you're listening to the webinar, but you're doing 10 other things, it might be good to mitigate those so you're effectively listening to the content that I'm sharing and you can consume the value of the information that I'm sharing with you. We want to empathize. So there's a difference between empathize and sympathy. So empathizing means putting yourself right next to that person. You have shared a common challenge with them. So don't say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, XYZ." Say, "Oh, I've had that experience before," or, "Oh, I've talked to my colleagues in AR and AP. Oh, we know what that challenge is all about." You have to be patient. Sometimes people need a little bit of time to get to the point, and then don't be afraid to ask questions to learn more if you're not sure, right, what the conversation is about, and then listen to the tone. But the last one is really one of my favorites. I'm probably still terrified of silence. I had a CEO when I worked as a treasury manager. He was the king of silence. So you'd be having a conversation with the CEO, and he would want to kind of get something out of you. So he would just leave a silence. It's especially effective if you're having a face to face conversation. So, as a leader and as building relationships, when you let the silence linger, people will tell you things. And it seems like people have the courage to tell you whether they intend to or not. So, on this slide, I would say, don't fear the silence. Again, just a little bit of a different way to put it. Listen, listen, listen. It's important, whatever your department is, to learn the professional languages of your colleagues. So, people in AR, Treasury, sales, we have different languages and really what resonates with us. So, if you will invest in that language, you will show your colleagues, whether you know it or not, that you have an interest in what they do and how they do it. And that helps you build credibility with them. This is something that I've used. Ask people to tell you their biggest work challenges. It's the way we're wired. Most of us people like to complain, not about people, right? Not too much belly aching, but these are challenges, right? Maybe we don't have the right data. Maybe I'm on the phone all the time. And then, isn't it great when you can help them solve their work challenges? Hey, I was on a webinar the other day. Have you guys thought about automating this? Maybe I can help you with some data. Maybe I'm an AI person. Maybe I can help you within your guidelines do some do some AI or Chat GPT or something to help you out. And then I mentioned this before: be authentic, communicate bad news proactively. Really, this is when you know you have the relationships that really matter and last. Trust with your colleagues, whether they be internal or external department, so they have no fear in communicating bad news to you proactively. This is also a skill, right? You have to have a little bit of a poker face on this sometimes, or a filter, and think about how you're going to respond, especially if it's via email. So you have to really, really get zen, right? Take a breath, maybe take a few minutes, and just think at the end of the day, uh, you are where you are, right? Whether that person intended that or not, whether or not it was their fault or not, this is where you're at a point in time. So the good news is if they communicate that to you as soon as possible, you can help mitigate that and then help the person get you to the solution, get them to the mindset of, okay, I'm not going to blame myself, right? And be sad and think, oh, my career's over. Let's get you in the mindset of, okay, who am I going to ask questions to? How am I going to fix this? So when I communicate that to someone that's going to impact, I already have this. So immediately disarm. I would say to something of the following. Uh, I've got first of all, uh, I know this isn't going to be what you want to hear. However, this is what we're going to do about it, right? I'm not going to blame XYZ. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to get to the solution as soon as possible, right? It could be something like your customer, right? They might have to tell you, well, these tariffs are really impacting our revenues. So if they tell you, right, that you might get a delayed payment, that can be incredibly important to your working capital optimization. And every customer that you have matters, and investing in each relationship is important. So let's talk about AR communication and internally. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our first polling question. So as I said, I'm going to go ahead and launch polling questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare those to survey results. So just asking you to share with me, do silos exist within your AR team? Don't worry, I'm not going to tell on you. If you say yes, again, if you're interested in receiving CTP credits or CTP or CPA credits via a certificate of attendance, please go ahead and answer all the polling questions. And then for those of you who aren't interested in those credits, it should only take you a second or two to push that button. So we like to have as many responses as possible. And then, as I mentioned, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and share these results, and then I'll comment on what I think, and then we will take a look at what I've seen in terms of survey results. And I'll also mention similar survey, right? What I see, do I see silos within Treasury teams and with AP teams? I've done research in each of these areas across the office of the CFO, so I'm pretty versed on the causes of silos and if they exist from the perspective of multiple parties across the office of the CFO. So let's go ahead and share the results real quick. So we see 57% yes. But I think if we look at the survey results, I think the I don't know is going to be a little bit lower. The I don't know is probably a scary thing. So I would say that's homework for you. You work in Treasury, I get it, but if you do, you should still venture to find out, because this can really help you get some predictability into your revenue streams. And there's a way to tactfully ask these questions. I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that as well. So let's keep that number in mind. 57% yes, 21% no. So let's keep that in mind. 57% yes. Let's see what we get. So we've got, from a survey that I conducted, had over 250 responses. So we have AR teams work in silos. If we look at strongly agree and agree, we have 73%. So the prevalence of silos existing is actually higher, right? And then I didn't really have exactly the same as far as I don't know, but what I will note is the disagree and strongly disagree is only at 17%. So what we can say here is there are silos that exist, and hopefully at the other companies they actually don't exist, but it could be that they just don't know they exist. So those are questions that we need to ask, especially if you're the AR leader. Of course, even if you're the controller, these are just things that impact the financial health and profitability of your company. So these are things that are valuable to your company, right? And then I also have survey results by company size. So again, if you'd like a copy of the slides, please just let me know. And we'll also be sharing the webinar recording. My friends at Esker will have it up. So for me, as a practitioner, I used to like to see, oh, I'm a mid-market company. So I would take a look and say, okay, where does that fall? And then when you have more time, right, when you're taking a look at the results, what I look for is really, some of these gaps. And then I kind of think through, okay, right, do these gaps make sense, right? And there's a lot of different factors that go into those results, but it's good to benchmark yourself. And also it helps if you're having a conversation with someone and say, wow, silos are important, right? I think we might have to look at our company and see if we can do something about that. So just interesting to take a look. So absolutely silos are prevalent. And then we look at the impact of those silos on AR success. So we see 42% significant, 11% is none. So I would say that number should probably be zero, because there is going to be an impact on AR success. And sometimes companies need to take a look at how they define AR success, and relationship management with our customers should definitely be a part of that. In addition to, from a treasury person, I want to look at, okay, how are we able to get some information on forecasting our receivables, right? That's important to us. And then the impact by company size as well, just for you to take a look at. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys another polling question real quick. So let me go ahead and launch that. So assuming you have silos that exist in your company, or you can say none exist, which has the biggest impact, you would say, on AR success, overall AR success, however your company defines that, or just what your understanding is? Is it credit and collections? Is it cash app and collections? Is it cash app and credit? Or is it collections and deductions? So I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another maybe 15 seconds or so. Again, I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions here today. Those of you interested in receiving a certificate of attendance, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions here today. So I know it's not basketball season, but I'm a basketball guy. I'm from Indiana, so I'm going to give you a little countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick peek at the results. So what we see here is credit and collections at the highest, and then collections and deductions at 24%. And I'm kind of giving away the results, but the reason I have Cash App and collections and Cash App and credit is what I've seen in my research is that Cash App has been more involved in having the largest negative impact than we see here. So let's just keep in mind before we look at the results from the survey. Again, they had 250 responses. All right, credit and collections was highest at almost 30%, and then collections and deductions at 24%. So let's go ahead and take a peek there. So what we see here, we have credit and collections here, obviously pretty close. But again, what I mentioned here is that in the company surveyed, we have a lot of friction here on Cash App. And Cash App is obviously can be very inefficient, but it can also impact relationships if we are putting our customers on hold. That's a big no-no if they don't deserve to be. And then it's also if we don't have cash applied, we are not accurately assessing our counterparty risk side of it. So we're managing risk exposures with the wrong information. That's going to cost us, especially if we are using hedging tools and actively managing that risk. So just giving you something to think about. So all these different areas, just silos exist. Okay, step one. And then we got to get down to the, I was just listening to Don Henley, so we got to get to the heart of the matter here in a minute. But we also asked what would have the biggest impact on AR success with improved collaboration. So we have Cash App and collections as the highest, and then we have credit and collections. So just kind of a thought, right? These areas have the biggest negative impact, and then you would like to see consistency. What's the biggest impact on AR success? As you should be investing in relationships, right, all across the enterprise. But if there's an area that's causing a lot more pain, that's something where you definitely need to have, I would say, a quick win, and it's going to have a big impact, which can help motivate more investment in addressing the other areas. And so this is why my research I know is different than a lot of other folks out there. So I look at the why. So I say, yeah, there's silos. That's where most people would stop. But I want to know why. So what really sticks out to me in what I've seen across my research of relationships and silos is where there's no real reason. Silos have always existed. No incentive to collaborate, right? We're not expected to collaborate, and you could have more than one cause. So if you look at this, you say, okay, to me, it's culture, right? There's not a culture of collaboration. It might be that we don't think silos are important. We don't realize the impact they're having. And this can be extremely detrimental to your company, especially in today's world of increasing uncertainty. So the issues that we have in our relationships internally and with beyond AR, it's just like when we we're going through COVID, especially on the AP side, the weaknesses that we had were magnified. And these weaknesses are going to be magnified, and it's going to really hurt your company, and especially the working capital and your folks in Treasury and finance, right, who are trying to make sure your company has the funds that they need at the lowest cost to keep your business running and capitalizing on opportunities, because a lot of great opportunities come when there's a lot of uncertainty. So we want to make sure that our company has collaboration in place to facilitate growth in us capturing those opportunities. So let's talk about communications with customers. This is one I like to get on my soapbox about. So I warned you up front, we're going to have more polling questions. So let's go ahead and launch polling question. And I really like this question because when I was in Treasury and I worked with AR, I didn't like the answer to the question, but I knew it was. Each communication from your AR team with your customer has a purpose. Again, I'm not going to tell on you, right? If you say no or you don't know. So, in managing customer relationships, it's really important that everyone who has an impact on it understands that they have an impact. So, there should not be a culture where there's free reign to just reach out to customers, have this dunning process where you're just banging on people. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? That's going to cost your company business. Each relationship matters. And so there should be a framework in place to manage those communications. And I'll talk about this in a little bit. My personal view is that there should be a reason for outreach and there should be a metric of success based on the intended action. And there's AI tools that Esker has that helps you learn what's the best way to reach out to a customer, what's the best timing, what is it that's going to incent and create the action that we want with our company. We can learn by company, we can learn by industry, we can learn by country. So there's a lot of great insights that AI can help us learn from. So let's go ahead. And so what we see here, I'll go ahead and share the results. So yes, 67%. Good to see that. I wish it was much higher. I don't know, right? That's really important, obviously. So that's a little bit more homework. If not, it's just an interesting conversation. You just don't go over to AR and say, hey, I don't know. Do you guys just say, no, that's not the way to do it? Hey, I was just on a webinar. I saw some survey results. It just got me thinking, and I don't really know the answer. Right? How do we track communication with our customers from AR? So keep in mind, 67% said yes. So let's go ahead and close our poll. And let's go ahead and see what the survey results. So I was glad to see that we had 84%. So we had strongly agree. So we saw 84%. So that's good. So that's one pillar of effective relationship management between AR and our customers. So good to see that. So let's go ahead, and the next step, I would say, classified with a reason code. So we should start to see trends and have a reason that we are reaching out, right, with our customers. Why are we calling them? Why are we emailing them? There should be a reason code. And then we can start to see, okay, are there trends that we're seeing with customers, with people that are assigned, right, to deal with collections and things of that nature. So we say yes. Here's what I don't like. Yes, but only with certain customers. And that's where technology helps us really manage that if we have quite a few customers. So I'd like to see that number. I definitely doesn't want it to be no, because then you are not learning and you're damaging your relationships with not only your current customers, but your future customers that come along. And also just it's common sense, but in this environment, people might be more stressed out. So the tone and tenor of your communications and your patience are more important than ever. And again, we have some information on the slides if you'd like a copy of those that take a look at the results by company size. So, and then the other part, the other pillar that I like to share is that you manage the number of communications, right? So we want to know, are we managing them? Are we managing the number of them? And do we have a reason code for those? So just makes common sense. if you don't manage the number of communications, again, not to bang on Dunning strategies when they can be good, but if you're pumping all these emails to your customers, they're going to get irritated if it even gets to their spam folder. So it's important that, and I like to look at this probably to put some boundaries on it by reason code, right? So maybe the frequency would go up a little bit, depending on when it incents an action. So if something doesn't work and you keep on telling someone you're late, you're late, you're late, you're late, all you're doing, you're not creating any value. You're just increasing the probability that you're going to lose business and you're going to lose a customer. So that's why I think managing the number is important. So internal communication. Now let's talk about communication with sales. So of course we are going to have another polling question. Don't worry, we'll slow down on the polling questions momentarily here. All right, so just go ahead and launch that polling question real quick. Just asking, based on what you know, do your AR and sales team collaborate effectively in managing customer relationships? Just where do you sit? You, for based on what you know, strongly agree, kind of in the middle, disagree, or strongly disagree. Forgot to mention earlier, if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop those in the chat area of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll talk about technology. If you have any really technology questions and want to get a good understanding of how technology facilitates not only better relationships, control of cash, you'll have the opportunity to request to be contacted at whatever time frame is best for you by my sponsor today, Esker. I can tell you from experience, Esker is a long time partner of mine. They are not by nature. I've never had anyone tell me they're salesy people. They want to understand your challenges and share with you if they can help you out in an honest manner. I've never had any kind of email or anything. So that's why I choose to have them as one of my key strategic partners. Okay, we need to get a few more responses here. I want to make sure everyone knows we're going to give the countdown. Everyone, if you could click the button, I'd appreciate it. Give you the countdown. Thank you. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. So it looks like it's about half and half, right? We got 50% uh, strongly agree, but then we have another 50% that can't agree. So, from my perspective, my experience, many of my conversations, there is a lot of friction between AR and sales and Treasury in sales. And some of the friction between AR and sales is an understanding. First of all, do you have a credit policy? Is it enforced? Do the salespeople understand that? And then related to that, what are our terms and conditions? What happens if we tell? So sometimes salespeople will tell people it's okay if you pay late, it's okay if you short pay. And all my treasury people and AR people are pulling their hair out because I've been there. So it's really important that we are aligned. And if there are going to be exceptions, which there might need to be, right, given today's work work, I say economic dynamics. It's not that I want that to happen, but I need to know that's going to happen, and maybe we need to revise our policy in some manner. So let's have a collaborative discussion about that and how it makes sense. So thank you everyone for taking the time to answer that polling question. So let's take a quick peek. AR team, my respondents here, I think, were a little bit overly, maybe a lot overly optimistic. So over 2/3 say that there's collaboration in managing customer relationships. So again, some of this data is just to make you think, to inspire a conversation, and also to think how could the value that we offer in our relationships with our customers improve if there was more communication between sales and AR? How could our cash forecast of receipts improve? How could that predictability improve? How could we improve our working capital if we got people to get along and be on the same page and comply with our policies, because they are there for a reason, especially in managing that counterparty risk. So I mentioned this, and excuse me, it's not always good news, but is AR again, communicating proactively, right? Oftentimes, salespeople are assigned accounts. So as they are letting sales know when customers are paying late, and doesn't mean to be a nasty email. It's just, hey, John, right? I know company B is your client. Just want you to know they're late. Been late a few times. Just wondering if there's something going on. Can you get me some insight on that? Know if I need to tame our expectations, or we need to look at their limits or their terms. And on the other side of that, does sales communicate with AR when deals close outside of standard payment terms? So this side, I don't think this happens this often. I wish it did. So we have almost 2/3 say usually and always. I would say from my experience and what I hear, I'm more of a manufacturing person. I would say it's probably rarely or never or sometimes. So we want to facilitate facilitate that two-way street of collaboration there. We're talking about how to do sales. And then one of the tools that we certainly want to align on is our credit policy. So I asked people to share, is it understood and followed by your AR and sales team members? This number is really a lot higher than I thought it would be. I'm always honest with what I see in my survey results, but it's just a thing, right? To keep in your mind, a thing. It's important that it's a consideration. So, do we have a credit policy? Is it understood and followed? Two different areas. Does AR understand it and follow it? Does sales? And when we're putting together our policy or looking at revising that, we should have if we should not exclude our sales team, right, on that conversation. Now, are they always going to want us to be more lenient if their compensation is tilted towards sales quotas? Absolutely. But that's okay. We want them to know what's going on and why, and we want to communicate to them that we understand your concerns. We all want revenue, we all want margin, but we need to do so in a manner that's consistent, that impacts our shareholder value and our risk tolerance. And then this one is a little bit, sorry, sales. Credit policy aligns with sales team's action. So even though the other result was really optimistic, only 59% could agree. So there's a prevalence of the sales team's actions are not consistent with the credit policy. So I love Houston, but Houston, we have a problem here. We need to have policies in place. It needs to be there for a reason. It needs to be followed. It needs to be enforced, and that may need to come down from the CEO or the CFO. But we really need to get the actions of sales aligned with our credit policy and make sure our credit policy is right sized for our risk tolerance and also right sized for the market conditions that we are facing. And then this one caused me concern. If I was a Treasury guy, I probably would have lost sleep on this. I asked to share people percentage of orders outside the credit policy. So we see that only 23% have less than 5%, and then another 7% they don't have a credit policy. So if you look at 11 to 15%, 16 to 20%, right, that's 42%. And you have at least 10%, probably in the neighborhood of 16, 17% of your orders are outside your credit policy. How can you possibly be effectively managing your risk exposures if that's the case? You can't. It's not consistent with your credit policy. So we need to track this. We need to understand why orders are taking place outside our credit policy. There could be very good reason for that. Like I said, is business dynamics change, but we need to put a box around that. And if it's a long-term issue, we need to look at changing our credit policy and having the conversations. So let's talk about AR communication with Treasury. I asked folks collaborate with Treasury relative to working capital management. Glad to see, but we still had 27% that neither agree or disagree, whether you're an AR, if you're an AR in Treasury, it's incredibly important that there's even more collaboration than ever. There's benefits of optimizing cash. It impacts the bottom line, and both sides care about the customer experience, the cash. So we as Treasury, if we're in Treasury, we need to reach out to AR. If we're in AR, we need to reach out to Treasury. And again, from Treasury, we have a focus on being efficient, but working capital management. If we don't have the right information for that, it can take our company off the rails. So really important if you're on the AR side, collaborating with Treasury, and of course Treasury owning cash. Talk about it all the time. Treasury, Treasury and AR. We'll talk about Treasury and AP. You want to own that cash conversion cycle, understand it, impact it, influence it as much as possible. Treasury, AP, and AR need to be aligned, but also other things that impact AR, like sales, have to be aligned as well across the office of the CFO, and also into sales and other areas that impact our cash management and the other things. Anyone that impacts how how much friction is created in doing business with us, right? And doing business with us, and we being a customer as well to someone else, we need to mitigate that. So, ask this question. I was hoping this would be 100% AR collaborates with Treasury relative to the accuracy of receipts forecast. So, just over, it's 57%. This is where this should be one of the, this to me is, if you're Treasury, this is one of the places where I would start. This is extremely important. And with on the AR side, this is a place where you can put that olive branch out, especially now. Look, we're seeing this predictability. We're trying to get do better on the forecasting of our receipts. So why don't we sit down and see what information that we have, and then if AR is actually delivering a forecast, then okay, how can Treasury give them information to make that forecast better? Or what I like is it lives in Treasury. How can we use information on what's coming in the pipeline and have that be as accurate as possible, and run scenario analysis to see what the most likely outcomes are. And then in Treasury, being able to react in as much as possible in real time, managing working capital based on what we actually see coming in for our customers. So now we're going to transition a little bit and talk about AI and AR. We could talk about AI on an entire webinar, and that's extremely important. And we'll touch on that and how it actually impacts folks. We'll focus on AR today. If you really want to understand the tremendous impact that technology can have in effective AR and cash control and cash management, I think a great way to do that is to have a conversation with my friends at Esker. So AI's been around now a little while here, but defining AI, what I usually like to talk about here is I talk about AI, and then I say AI is this, and then generative AI is this. So in my simple terms, AI, right? Well, let's talk about a little bit, read definition a little bit. It refers to the simulation of human intelligence by machine. So what I see AI is it makes us more efficient, allows us to automate tasks and learn, right? Learn from those tasks going over and over. Tells us, okay, what happened? How can we make things more efficient? And then what we see is generative AI, where generative AI gives us maybe predictions, right, on how to do that better. Generative AI produces content. So based on this information, maybe we ask, what is the cause of XYZ? How can we create a better credit policy? How do I redefine my categories? So again, benefits of AI and AR. We'll dive into these. Automating financial tasks, right? Facilitating decision making, giving you information and trends, and then boosting business resiliency. This is where I see the generative AI piece of it really taking place. So let's a little bit real quick, myth versus fact. AI is a passing fad. I hope no one still feels that way. It's here to stay, whether we like it or not. Do I like to go into my LinkedIn and see about AI and have everyone tell me that I can't breathe without AI? Absolutely not. But it's something that we need to understand at a base level. In terms of financial operations, treasury, AR, AP, procurement, my view is that a lot of this technology is already being embedded into the solutions that you have or are looking at. So let's not all go out and think we know how to program Python and all that good stuff. Let's just understand what's under the hood, right? So, hey, are you using AI? well, how you do it? Wait, at a high level, how are you doing that? So don't go back and tell the software vendor you need to do this XYZ. Make sure you understand what it's doing and make sure there's security of your data, right? It's being used. Is my data being used to train your AI search engine? That's a conversation that you might want to have. And then the other piece of it is some people think it's going to replace all the jobs. I can't say specifically. I've been doing research more about AI and automation. I can tell you in AR, AP, and Treasury for the last 6 years, I've looked at are jobs increasing or decreasing or staying the same? Almost across the board, company size industries, there's actually more jobs being added. AR is not going away. In fact, there's hiring in talk to AR. What's going on is people are becoming more efficient in redefining their value proposition and offering strategic value. So companies are seeing that the ROI, a lot of that you just need to put the right box around it. You need to look at not only efficiency when you look at all the dimensions of the time savings, but then also on the impact of better decision making. It's incredible as well. AI will solve all your problems in AR. AI is not going to solve all your problems in anything. That's one of the reasons for our webinar today. Relationships matter. It doesn't matter what type of technology you have if you don't have the right relationships in place. You don't understand how to leverage that technology, and if you do so without understanding it, it's going to be a disaster. So, just some interesting content, maybe for you to take a look at afterwards. So we just see a credit analyst. So a lot of times what they see is busy work, Excel templates, disjointed systems, right? It really prevents her from doing her job, which should be about analyzing the credit worthiness, what's the financial health, right, of maybe someone we're looking at for being a customer or an existing customer, right? So what technology empowers her to do, it collects and combines the data, right, and assess the credit risk and makes more educated decisions. Maybe it asks questions, it learns, right? We can say, this was our model before. Okay, let's take a look at what is our bad debt? Is that related to any of those characteristics that we were weighing before? How do we optimize those weights? And then it can do a good job at suggesting credit terms, right? In terms of the risk category, however you define that, and also the credit limit. And then we can have reports on the trends. So, the credit analyst perspective, what we want to do is help them focus on the analysis part of their job and not focus on inputting data and chasing information around different areas. And then we have cash application and deduction specialists. I could do a whole hour on the cash app and deduction side. So we have webinars I've done with Esker on cash app on their website and on my YouTube channel if you really want to dive in there. But this is a really place that can have a lot of inefficiency. So on cash application, just getting the files in, that hit rate can be really low. In some of what AI does, it helps us learn right on the way in, right? How do we apply that cash? Are we making adjustments over and over again? How do we make those, or at least ask the question? We've seen this. Do we want to do this? And then on a deduction side as well, just being able to see, okay, are there trends in these deductions by clients? Why are they doing that? What can we do to facilitate that not happening again? Right. So just a few more things I talked about: auto match, splitting batches and remittances, and then extracting data from supporting documents. So there's a lot of inefficiency built into still, I think, in the cash app side. No offense, especially if you have lock boxes. And on the deduction side, I've done a webinar with Esker on that as well. So what that does is it helps Tanya, right, avoid inefficiencies, allows her to communicate more effectively with those internally, but also potentially with our customers. And it's really important on the resolution side, on the deductions. And she can have a conversation. Sometimes there can be a misalignment, maybe sales. Maybe there's an issue with sales where they were telling customers they can take all these deductions, and then customers like, oh, well, you gave me terms 210 net 30. Well, what does that actually mean? So helps her better manage her relationships that she has internally and with our customers as well. And increasing that friction with our customers is incredibly important. And then our AR credit managers, again, singing the same tune, the efficiency as well allows him to focus on measuring and monitoring the performance of his team, putting that forecast together, leveraging technology to help him create the optimal amount and type and tenor of those communications with with uh, with our customers as well, and helps him recruit and retain his talent. There's still absolutely a war for talent in AR across the office of the CFO, and companies that bring people in with manual processes, multiple systems, time spent on the phone arguing with the same customers about the same issues because there are silos of information and collaboration. That is when we are going to have problems. And given the uncertainty in the world, having all 8 players on your AR, Treasury, finance, sales teams are more important than ever. And then the CFO, right? Absolutely important. So when I look at information to the CFO, I want to give the CFO the information that helps them ask the right questions. They can monitor things, right, at a very high level. So look at what's the cost of things and easily look at trends that matter to them. We don't want to give them the same reports that we give to our analysts, right? They are a consumer of information and reports. So the information that we give to the CFO is incredibly important. I can tell you from experience, if you give the wrong information to the CFO, they are going to send you off on tangents that you can spend your life on within and beyond work. So we want to make sure that we give them the information, but also empower them, right, to do inquiries on their own to see, right, what's going on. They're looking at things at a very high level. Okay, what questions should I ask the controller? Should I ask the director of AR? What question should I ask? They can ask, how can I help you? And then they also look at high level trends like, okay, I know there was a big tariff in this industry. Okay, what is that doing on our timing? Did I know about this? Are there comments in my solution where I can see I already have the answers? John already made a comment on these invoices, so it facilitates that collaboration, and the CFO can be a resource, right? It's not the CFO's job to yell at her people and say their job is to empower their team with the technology stack that they need to deliver value as one of the many tenets of their value proposition. Let's talk about treasury relationships. I asked survey, do we have cash management silos from a treasury perspective across the board? Within treasury team, 28%, AP and treasury, 37%, AR and treasury, 22%. So those are all really high. I can tell you, based on my experience at AP conferences, AP people feel the same way. We'll talk a lot about AP in our webinar in June, but there is this disconnect or silos. I've had AP people tell me, how do I approach Treasury? Treasury, how do you approach AP? We went through that in the beginning about building, how to build those relationships. Happy to have that conversation offline at all. What we could see if we have our cash management hat on is there's a lot of prevalence of silos. Now we look at the cause of the silos, right? What we see is similar to earlier. We're not expected to collaborate. We have no incentive to collaborate. We have no reason for our silos. So these are pervasive. So do silos exist? Why do they exist? How do we mitigate those silos by facilitating an environment of collaboration, communication, collaboration, bottom line impact. That's what it's all about. And then interesting, this is a report I mentioned earlier, the 2025 AFP Treasury Benchmarking Survey Report, one of the best reports I've read in a long time, to be quite honest with you. So talked about all these areas of alignment. So they asked, what about relationship momentum from a treasury perspective? What are we going to see in the coming months and year about interaction? We're going to see more interaction, no change or less. Great to see. APAR, AP, 54%, right? Well, they would like to see more with the C-suite, right? Treasury doesn't always control that. AR, 43%. That's what we're really focused on here today. But just look at that. So if you're from an AR perspective, Treasury is expecting more interaction, so they're going to want that outreach. If we looked at the AR perspective, they realize that there needs to be more collaboration. So the environment is the right way, and that you can bond. There's a lot of uncertainty around, so we can say, "Wow, uncertainty. Let's work together to deliver value." So again, like a copy of the slides, let me know. I love the survey results. Really, really impactful. I haven't seen this in a long time. And then just to show my Treasury folks, but this also applies to AP and AR, how important the soft skills are. So you're going to make an impact in those relationships, right? Bank relationship management. Hello, our banks, cash forecasting. Cash forecasts are impacted by AP and AR, right? We need communication skills, analytical skills, collaboration skills, all way over 50%, right? And then we look at presentation skills. That should be higher, but one of the things I like to preach about is soft skills matter no matter where technology takes us. And technology, it can absolutely be an amazing tool to facilitate better collaboration. One thing that I often saw is just the silos of information, right? That's what causes problems internally and externally, especially with customers. We're not looking at the same information. And then if we're trying to manage our customer relationship, if sales can't see what AR is doing and AR can't see what sales is doing, we're going to not have a consistent message with our customers, which is going to cause issues with our customers and our bottom line as well. So as always, we have a lot of key inferences, and then we'll wrap things up with some takeaways. Before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question. I appreciate everyone's consideration in answering my final polling question, not only to myself, but also to my webinar partner who allows me to do what I do at no cost to you. So again, I appreciate your collaboration. Esker, so some key inferences, right? Take it from an AR perspective first. Companies face silos in their AR teams. A lot of times there's more than one silo. Some of the big causes are just a lack of culture of collaboration, which should be worked on. Companies need to understand and invest in mitigating the silos within and beyond their AR teams. In AR, every part of the office CFO I mentioned need to invest in managing relationships beyond their own department. And then it's beneficial to all members of the office of the CFO to become more tech savvy. That's going to just fuel productivity, and it's going to expand the professional value proposition. You redefine your value proposition, you communicate that with impact. Your job should not be going away. I can't say that it won't, but that'll give you the firepower to find an organization that really values the strategic value that you can offer. So I'm going to go ahead and end that poll. So thank you very much. So those inference I just went through. And then finally, our key takeaways. You should invest in building relationships across the office of the CFO. Your company would do well to take a deep dive into your entire AP, AR, and Treasury processes. If you look at cash management done right, continuous improvement, invest in technology that facilitates that was a big misread. Visibility across your P2P process, your O2C process, all customer and supplier interactions. You can't manage what you can't see, and technology empowers data-driven decision-making and relationships. Invest in technology that eliminates asymmetries of information, and then the alignment of AP, AR, and Treasury empowers the control of cash and empowers the success of your organization. If you haven't yet had the opportunity to listen to my Treasury Truth or Dare podcast, I have 10 episodes live, really excited about it. It's a different take. It focuses on why people are passionate in Treasury, what drives their success, why our profession is important, what makes guests tick, and why Treasury is fun. I'm going to ask you in the survey results if you would like to learn about being a guest or nominate someone that you know being a guest. Again, it's a really fun and different experience. just want to share this slide with you. This is a big takeaway. I love this cash conversion cycle. You can manage it on one platform. And finally, thank you everyone today for your valuable time. Have the courage to live your treasury truths and dare to be great in everything that you do beyond treasury. Thank you.